The last story in Genesis chapter 32 is probably my favorite story in all of Genesis. So here we have Jacob. He's been rebelling against God, rebelling against his own brothers, and against his own father and father-in-law. He's very shrewd, and he's just known to try to pull one over on people. And he basically comes face to face with God in this story. He's traveling with his family, trying to flee from his past, flee from all the problems that he's caused, all the bridges that he's burned. And so he sends his family ahead with his possessions across the stream, and he stays the night somewhere. And it's there in this place that he wrestles with a man. All night long until daybreak, they are fighting and wrestling. And towards the end of the night, this man sees that he can't overcome Jacob, or that Jacob's just going to continue to be persistent, stubborn, like he's always been known to be. And so this man touches Jacob's hip in such a way that it wrenches it, it pulls it, and it injures him. And then he tells Jacob to let him go. And then Jacob says something very interesting here. He says, I will not let you go until you bless me. And then the man says, fine, what's your name? And he says, my name is Jacob. And he says, well, your name will no longer be Jacob. It will be Israel, which means struggles with God. For you have struggled with God and have overcome. And then Jacob asks him, well, please tell me your name. And this man replies, why do you ask me my name? And then he blessed him there. And it's there that Jacob names this place Peniel, which means the face of God, because he has come face to face with God, and yet his life was spared. Now, so often we read this story and we think to ourselves, how did Jacob wrestle God and win? How did he overcome God? Well, that's not really what's happened here. If you've noticed, it's Jacob who actually leaves this fight with a limp, not the man who he's been wrestling with. So Jacob leaves as the injured one. And then also for Jacob to ask this person who he has wrestled with all night long for a blessing means that Jacob knows that he is less than this man. This man is greater than he. He has more power, more authority, and he is asking for his blessing in the same way that he wanted his own father's blessing. So Jacob fully realizes that he's not overcome him either physically, he's not overcome him in any way of stature, and so he receives this blessing from this man. And the thing that we find Jacob truly overcoming in this story is himself, because his narrative from here on out, it changes. He becomes less arrogant, less focused on his own druthers, and starts to think about other people. And he almost becomes part of the backstory in the rest of Genesis. He eventually is no longer the primary figure in the narrative. He takes a step back, and other people begin to step up, like his son Joseph. And so we find in this story the real thing that Jacob has overcome is himself. And so often when we wrestle with God, when we struggle with him, maybe we've gone through a really tough situation, maybe there's a loss in our lives that we don't understand. Maybe there's a streak of rebelliousness in us that we just can't seem to kick, and we fight with God constantly and fight with other people, other men and women in our lives, and it just seems like there's always conflict. It's in these moments that we need to come to God and let him overcome us. Let us realize that he is both physically stronger than us and his stature is greater, and we need to be able to be humbled and to ask him to bless us. Have the realization that we need him and we cannot overcome him, and we need to overcome ourselves. Our own desires for power need to be put aside, and God needs to be first. And if there's anything we learn from the Bible, it's this idea that we're also supposed to put others first. And Jacob's story tells us that we can be overcome, and that's a good thing.